Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 110. Dream as if you would live forever and live as if you will die tomorrow. Anonymous.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome, my Indie Film Hustlers, to another episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Now, today's show is sponsored by VideoBlocks. Now, VideoBlocks is a subscription-based stock media company that gives you unlimited access to premium stock footage everyone could afford. If you're looking for like extra exterior shots or things that you might want to incorporate into any of your projects, whether that be a narrative, documentary, music videos, commercials, these guys got you covered. They've got unlimited daily downloads from a library of over 115,000 HD video clips, as well as a huge selection of After Effects templates for like opening credits, motion graphics, titles, company logos, as well as motion backgrounds as well. It's pretty amazing. And on average, subscribers pay less than $1 per download in a course of a year. And the content does not get stale. They're constantly adding new content to the library every month. So it keeps it very, very fresh, and you always have something new to look forward to. And everything you download is 100% royalty free. Even if your subscription is canceled, you have unrestricted usage rights for anything you want to do, including personal projects and commercial projects, and you keep whatever you download and maintain the usage rights forever. Now, VideoBlocks is offering The Tribe a yearly subscription for $99. That's $50 off the usual price tag, just for you guys, just for The Tribe. That's less than $10 a month. So to get this deal, just head over to videoblocks.com/hustle. That's VideoBlocks, VIDEO blocks.com/hustle for this exclusive offer. And don't forget to go to freefilmbook.com. That's freefilmbook.com to download your free filmmaking audiobooks from Audible. So guys, today on the show, we have director Benjamin Cox. He just directed an amazing little film called Better Off Single that's going to be released soon if it has not already been released, and has a great cast, including comedy legends, Louis Black and Chris Elliott. And he is one of the definitions of indie film hustling, without question. He did a lot of indie film hustling to make this movie and to get this movie made. And he wanted to share his story with The Tribe. And I hope you guys pick up something out of this, because he drops a lot of little knowledge bombs, a lot of little nuggets of great information on how he got this thing made, how he worked with actors, how he got it financed, how he got it finished, and so on. So without any further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Benjamin Cox. Would I like to welcome to the show, guys, Benjamin Cox. How are you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm well. How are you?
Good, man.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for doing it, man. You have a fun little movie, and I think you definitely did a lot of indie film hustling during the making. I heard, so I thought it would be a great story to kind of talk about and see how you got not just like a little low budget thing off the ground, but it looks like like a substantial film, sir. Production value wise.
Right on. Nothing like the indie film, just from soup to nuts. So
yeah, absolutely. So, how did you get into the crazy business, man? First of all.
Well, it's funny because unlike I guess kind of a lot like a number of filmmakers, I did my first film, probably when I was like in third grade, one of those kinds of things, and then kind of took a bit of a detour and did sort of non-film related things for a while. And then probably around 2003, 2004, something like that, I got involved in New York with an organization called Stellar Network, which was founded by a number of folks, including Hannah Minghella, who is now running production over at TriStar, and she's kind of amazing, and Nicola Berman and some other folks, all with the goal of helping young up-and-comers in film, theater, and television enhance their careers via networking. And so I was working actually in finance at the time, and I volunteered to be their finance director on this organization. So it gave me the opportunity to get involved with folks who are just doing this full time, and talking to them about their projects, and then networking, and then learning and figuring out sort of the best sort of plan of attack for when I was going to fully transition out of the day job, if you will, into the filmmaking side of things. And then, of course, meeting people, networking, the purpose of that organization, which was so fantastic. So that's really kind of how it started on some level.
Now, you said the one word that stuck out for me was TriStar, because I haven't seen that horse logo in such a long time.
I don't even know if TriStar, the logo still exists. I'm not really sure.
I know, you're right, because you know what I'm talking about. Like, I used to see that wonderful horse animation with the flying horse. It was such a great thing. Anyway, I'm just geeking out. Sorry.
Yeah, I know the one. That's pretty great.
So so I saw that you've made a lot of short films in your career so far. How did making those short films prepare you for your feature debut?
Well, I really think you just kind of have to roll up your sleeves and get in there and just start shooting stuff, because you can look at things in an abstract level and say, oh, well, I mean, first of all, you know that you're a director when you watch something on TV and you immediately think to yourself, like, no, I could do that better, right? I mean, that's just sort of like I don't know.
Touche, yes, sir, yes.
It's kind of what goes through every director's brain. I mean, it's an arrogance or whatever. I'm not really sure.
Mm-hmm.
But then what you find is when you start shooting it, you're like, oh, maybe I can't do that better because I don't actually know what I'm doing.
Exactly.
So from that perspective, it was hugely informative for me to get behind the camera, start writing, crewing up, doing all the things that it takes to, make a movie and really try things out. I mean, in the first handful of projects that I worked on, short films, I was lucky in the sense that I was working with some folks who really knew what they were talking about and really gave me an appreciation for sort of the editing process and what it means to cut something and make it better and better and better and better, and how I assume on this podcast we can swear, right? So
yes, sir.
What I like to call it is the fuck it button.
Yeah.
If you're, and this is particularly relevant for me whenever I'm writing or if I am editing something. And what I mean by the fuck it button is you get to a certain point where you start to question your life, like you're writing a scene or you can't figure out how to get the transition in the edit from like one sequence to another sequence, or why isn't this performance working? And you're pounding your head against the wall. You start to wonder why you're not a bartender in Maui or doing something, literally questioning your life.
That sounds so good.
And you literally get to the point where, sort of the proverbial red button appears that says fuck it, because you can at that point just do what most people do, which is to say, all right, you know what, performance is good enough, fuck it, you know what, I've been cutting this thing for weeks, fuck it, and moving on.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of the sick side of me is when that button appears, if you will, that's for me the point at which you can do something truly great. So you have to push through it, you got to move the button aside and really dig in further. And I think learning those lessons on short films is hugely important, because then when you really get down to brass tacks later, it's like you get it. You're like, okay, now I understand going in these 8 lines of dialogue or descriptive or whatever from the script before we even get to the set, because it's going to be pointless. I'm going to kill it in the edit anyway. And I think really sticking to it and digging deep, if you will, is the thing that's going to make things work and allow you to be as efficient as you need to be when you get to something like, shooting a movie like Better Off Single, where, we shot that in 18 days, 3 6-day weeks with like 2 days off in between. And so it was fast, and there's like 51 story days in that movie running around New York City. So the only way we could do that for, a pretty modest budget is by being as efficient as possible and really making sure we know what we're doing.
Now, as I think it was Picasso or Da Vinci, I'm not sure who it was, but it says that art is never finished, it's abandoned. So that would be the fuck it button. At a certain point, you just got to go, I could be on this scene literally for another year.
Yeah, well, but what's interesting too is like Scorsese has an interesting approach to this kind of thing. Like somebody asked him at some point, hey, why don't you go back to Mean Streets and recut it the way like George Lucas does some of his stuff, and and he's like, in order for him to feel like it's truly representative of where he is at a certain stage in his career as a filmmaker. He has to give it everything he's got at the time, make literally the best movie that he can possibly make at that stage, and then when he's done, he knows he did everything he could possibly do, and then he moves on, and he's never going to change it again. And sure, if he made Mean Streets today, would it be better? Well, in theory, yeah, it should be, because he's evolved, right? But it's representative of where he was at that time, and so that's really all you can do. And so for me, it's less about the notion of abandonment. It's more like, this is representative of what my skill sets are, and I try not to get too precious about, oh my God, it's the be all and end all, because if I don't, do this, I'm going to have anxiety forever. Right. It's kind of like, you do the best that you can possibly do, and then you go on to the next thing, and that's cool because it's all part of one body of work.
Right. So then I'm sure you look back, as I do with my short films, and you just go, oh, I could do that better. I could do that better. Geez, why didn't I do that? Why did I do this? But that's any artist, I think, with any form of art. I'm sure you go back and just go, oh, I could change that. I could change this.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure.
Now, how did you get Better Off Single off the ground?
Well, it's interesting because for me, there was a lot of, and I imagine this is similar for folks who are directing their first feature. It was a question of like, well, who the fuck is Ben Cox, right? Like, who is this guy? It doesn't, you know what I mean? It's nice that I can speak words, and maybe you like the script, or maybe you don't like the script. But unless you have at least some sort of recognition over the notion, like, hey, this is something you know how to do, and you have a track record for it, it's like you're kind of up Schitt's Creek. And so for me, it was about building a team, and one of the first things I did was try to really dig deep on the script, and I really believe in feedback, and trying to get as much of that feedback as I could possibly get, and starting with like sort of what I would call low-hanging fruit, i.e. people who don't necessarily work in the industry, or people who work in the industry but are friendly and are not going to badmouth you to somebody else later because they read something that was drivel and they were like, you could tell everybody about it. And like really bounce ideas off of people and just see, well, what's working on the page, and what changes need to be made. And so, I think I probably took like a good year of just going back and getting as much feedback as humanly possible on the script, and letting people tear it apart, and specifically trying to solicit that feedback in as detailed a way as possible, so that I could sit down, usually in sort of units of 10, where I'd have 10 versions of the script where people have marked it up, and then I would sit down and look at page 1 and go, okay, well, there's 3 jokes on this page, because it's a comedy, right? So there's 3 jokes on this page. 2 of them are resonating all the time, and one of them, not so much. So it's like gives me at least a sense of what I need to be killing, right? And then after getting the script to a point where it's like, okay, now that the low-hanging fruit has been exhausted, now take a little bit more risk and bring it out to some people. And one of the people that I met in my time with Stellar Network that I had mentioned before is a woman named Tracy Becker, who, her brainchild was Finding Neverland, sort of back in the day. She's the one who developed that and brought it to, at the time, Miramax, and then they obviously made it into a movie, and that was like her first feature as a producer, and obviously not a bad one to have it.
Not a bad one to start with, yeah.
Yeah, and so she and I were friendly via the Stellar Network stuff, and I brought it to her and asked her for notes, and she gave me a ton of notes, and I said, would this be something you'd be interested in working on as a producer? And she said, no.
Okay.
Absolutely not. It's not far enough along. Here's like a copious amount of notes that I would incorporate, and and you should be getting notes from other people. And I got a whole bunch from other people, blah, blah, blah. And then, I went away for a few months, and I came back and I said, all right, here's where we are now. Can you let me know if this might be feasible? And she said, yeah, this is cool. Now let's talk. So now Tracy is somebody who is real in the industry. Meg knows what she's doing. And so she's signed on to produce with me.
Nice.
And one of the short films that I had produced years before was something where the DP was a guy named Vincent Laforet, who's pretty prolific in sort of like the digital filmmaking space. He actually won a Pulitzer as a photographer. He's kind of awesome. And Vincent read the script and he was like, "Hey, I'm really into this script and I love it." He goes, "But what I would do is I would additionally talk to Russell Carpenter." And I was like, "Who's Russell Carpenter?" Well, Russell Carpenter won an Oscar for cinematography for Titanic, right?
He's James Cameron's guy. Did True Lies? Did a bunch of his movies.
Yeah, he did. I know who he is now, but but at the time I really didn't have an appreciation, and I looked him up, and I was like, "Wow, okay, yeah, sure. If he's willing to read the script, I'd love to do it."
Did Russell? Was he your DP on this?
He initially signed on to be the DP of the movie, which is sort of one of the best meetings I ever had. Probably my favorite coffee of all time.
Oh my God, I can imagine.
Out in LA, where we sat there for 3+ hours, and I don't think I touched the latte that was in front of me. We were both very animated and talking about all things creative, and he was a big fan of the script, which is cool, and it felt very complimentary. And so he said, "Look, who knows what will end up happening? There's all kinds of things." He goes, "But if it's helpful, yeah, I would love to do it. I think it'd be great. You can figure out what it is." Now, it ended up being the case that we couldn't raise enough funds to do this as a union movie. So Russell was an executive producer on the movie, and he helped us get gear and do some other things. Got a great call from Panavision one day, "Russell would like us to help you. We are going to help you."
Nice.
Awesome. But anyway, so it's I got Tracy involved, I got Russell involved, and then I had been working on sort of different people from a casting perspective for a long time, and one of the people I came in contact with is Patricia DeSerto, who casts, among other things, all of Woody Allen's movies. She's done his last 20+ movies, and so she is phenomenal, and I probably begged her for 2 years to be the casting director for the movie, and at one point she finally said, "You know what? All right, let's do it. And so with those folks, and then Chris Doritas, who's a DJ at KCRW in LA, he came up with the show Morning Becomes Eclectic forever ago, and he's kind of a legend as a music supervisor too. He's been nominated for a couple of Grammys. So he joined to be our music supervisor / co-producer on the movie, and he brought along with him a guy named Chris Muckley, who's also a DJ at KCRW and is amazing, and is the music supervisor on the movie ultimately. And just started building out as impressive a team as I could possibly muster.
It's a hell of a team.
All people. Yeah, it's pretty great. My goal is to be sort of the dumbest, slowest, least attractive person involved in the movie.
That's really smart advice, actually.
Yeah, my thinking is if I'm the worst one, then we're gonna be fine, right? So if you get people in with the right attitude and who are really, really great, then you're building a positive spiral for success, and it's like a bucket of water, right? I sound cheesy when I say shit like this, but here I go. It's it's a bucket of water, right? If you spin it in one direction, or if you spin it in the other direction, whichever way you're going to start spinning that water, it's going to move, right? So you go negative, it's going negative, and even if you try to stop it and go the other way, you have to first fight the current to stop it and then get it going in the right direction. But if you get that positive spiral going, the same thing applies, where it's going to help you and it'll carry you in spots once it's already moving, so that as long as people understand and believe that that this thing is moving forward, and we're out to make something that's truly fucking great, then I think you can really make something that's really fucking great, and that's kind of the idea.
That's really I'm going to steal that analogy, because that's an actually great analogy for that, because a lot of times filmmakers just get caught up in the negative, or there's the wrong kind of people, the wrong kind of team, and it just kind of starts going that one direction, and then it just goes right into the ground. But I've seen other projects that they just pick the right people at the right time, and then things just start moving. And it's true. And even if something negative happens, your momentum is still going positively, so it can handle it, and you just kind of keep going. And now I was going to ask you the question, how did you get over the whole first-time director thing? But I see what you've done is you actually got a whole bunch of 800-pound gorillas in a room, and they kind of helped you bust through the door a bit. And obviously the script and the project itself. But I know a lot of people with good scripts that never get them made. So you were smart enough to kind of bring in the right people that could at least attract the right people to help you get through the door. Is that a good explanation?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's I also try to think about it as like the who's driving the bus factor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you let people know that, like, look, we're driving the bus, and on some level it's kind of like a game of chicken, right? The analogy that somebody gave me a long time ago, which I think is apropos, is if you're driving in your car and you're going straight towards this bus and you are playing chicken, the only way that you can win truly is to look the other driver in the eye as you're pummeling towards one another, and take the steering wheel off your car out the window. And so,
Right.
as long as the other driver sees you threw the steering wheel out the window, then you don't have a choice. I mean, it's not like making your first movie is a decision based in intelligence.
Oh God, no.
It's like you just have to decide: are you doing it or are you not doing it? Like, do you want it? Because if you want it, then throw the steering wheel out the window, and you're going to win the game of chicken, or you will crash and burn.
That's great.
But at least there's not indecisiveness that's going to shoot you in your own foot, and you'll be able to really move forward steadily with the objectives that, like, hey, I'm going to figure this out come hell or high water,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm bringing people along with me who believe in the concept and what it is that we're all going to do together. And it's like, we make our movie, right? Like, it's not my movie. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like, it might be like, hey, check out my movie, this or that, but, like, it's our movie. It's like, we're all doing it. So if you get the right folks who are happy to be on board and really are out to do things at, like, a super duper high level,
Mm-hmm.
then you're going to be great. And also, there's a lot of folks who I work, I shoot commercials, I do other things. I mean, there's people who are in the commercial world that, they think of it as like making sausage, right? Like,
Right.
people want to go make movies. People want to make indie movies. Like, if they're doing, sausage making on sort of like a commercial level or web content that, like, doesn't pay money and, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's not as fun. So it's like, why not empower people to do the things that they want to do anyway? And you got to stick your neck out there a little bit. But I mean, for me, it's like, it's a bigger failure if you don't try it. And so it wasn't too tough to kind of go make the decision. I think it was just more a question of, like, well, how feasible is this, and how long can it take? And of course, it takes way longer than you think it's going to take. It's way harder than you necessarily think it's going to be. But hopefully at the end of it, you have something that you're really proud of. And, in this case, that does work out for me in terms of Better Off Single and some of the other things that are going as well. So that's cool.
So if I may be so bold as to suggest that if this whole directing thing doesn't work out, you write a book on analogies. Sausage making, the steering wheel,
Yeah, I know.
and the bucket. Those three are gems. Honestly, they're really great.
I'm not short of analogies. I'm sure I have more.
I'm telling you, you should write a book on filmmaking analogies. Just write a quick ebook or something. It'd be great. Now, out of curiosity, what camera did you shoot on? You said Panavision. Did you shoot this on film?
We shot on an Alexa.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, it was great. Our DP is a guy named Igor Kropotov, and he did a really nice job, I think. And
it looks gorgeous. From the trailer, it looked gorgeous.
Yeah, thanks. It was pretty fast, but I think it was nice having access to an Alexa because of the range that camera's got, and
It's a gorgeous camera.
you can do a lot of stuff on that. So that's nice.
And what size crew did you have, generally speaking?
I mean, it pretty standard kind of indie size crew, like 35 to 50 bodies kind of running around on any given day, depending on what was going on. It was pretty legit. I mean, we shot mostly 3 and 3 as far as like our G&A team, and we had certain people came in extra depending on how big of a shoot day it was. If we were at a bigger location, and maybe we want to try to use a jib, but we were trying to be smart and judicious about when we were going to get fancy with stuff. So we did have a day where we wanted to get some top down shots and have the camera fly through the air a little bit. So it's like, okay, good. Well, what else can we piggyback on that day, and how can we maximize that, and where do we want it to be placed in the movie, and kind of go from there. I mean, I think Robert Rodriguez's book, is pretty informative in that sense. You know, he's like, look, I'm gonna try to put high production value things at the beginning of my movie and at the end of my movie, and in the middle, we'll get by on story. So if we can sort of tee it up that way and set the right tone, I mean, people are always interested to watch indie movies, but I think they're pleasantly surprised if they start watching an indie movie and it doesn't look terrible. And they're like, this looks like a movie. It's not like an indie movie, you know?
Right.
Colloquial approaches to this kind of thing. I mean, people who work in the film industry think about it differently, obviously, but like I just mean average moviegoers. Mm-hmm. And, you know, so for me, it's kind of like I want to set the tone. Like, yeah, did we do this pretty inexpensively? Was it difficult? You know, all the rest of that kind of stuff, the usual indie hustle stuff as you talk about. Yeah, but we want it to look really good because ultimately that's going to be the thing that's going to enable us to pay our investors back and ensure we get as many eyeballs on it as possible, which is really the point.
Now, and I'm assuming that your casting director had a lot to do with the great cast that you have.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think it certainly adds credibility when Patricia DeSerto is picking up the phone because she's like literally a legend. I mean, she's amazing, and that definitely helps. But I also think it's kind of like, well, once you start to go down the path and you figure out, okay, well, this is how we're going to do it, then you have to have the script that is going to work, and then you got to meet with people and, you know, make sure that there's the right connection, you know, like that it's going to work and that people understand the characters and that we're all sort of doing this for the right reasons. And so you can't have leads to your movie who show up on set and are like annoyed that they're going to change their clothes behind two V flats in the corner, you know. You know, right. You've got to be like, okay, guys, like, so this is what we're going to do here, and you know, we need people to self-report to set, and you know, there's nothing fancy going on here at all, like. And
it's not that kind of movie.
Not that kind of movie, and you know, and I've certainly been in situations where people don't seem to get that, and it makes it a lot harder for everybody. And so this was a question of like, all right, well, let's start building the team, and once we can get a few people on board of note, then that's going to really help, and we'll just sort of move from there. And yeah, it was just kind of a really nice thing. I mean, it worked out great too, I think, from the actor's perspective, because all of the actors in the movie are great, you know, like they're tremendous, and it became almost not really competitive exactly, but it's sort of like if you're an actor and you show up on this set and you don't have it that day, you're gonna feel real silly,
right?
Because everybody brings it every day, you know, and that's one of the things that was awesome for me. Directing a movie like this because like literally like Aaron Tveit and Abby Elliott and Lauren Miller Rogen and Cal Penn and Lewis Black, Chris Elliott and, you know, Kellen Coleman and Shane McRae and like the whole bunch of folks who would come in and do something. I mean, like Annalee Ashford is in the movie. She shot 2 days, and she flew in from LA on she was shooting Masters of Sex, and she flew in on a red eye on a Friday night and landed on Saturday morning, came to the production office, slept under a desk for like 3 hours.
Wow.
And then got up and then did this awesome scene.
Right.
And then went to sleep for like a normal night, and then we shot her out as fast as we could early in the morning. We were actually shooting at Old Town Tavern in New York in a bar, like, you know, at 7 a.m. And then went to an apartment and shot her scenes and her coverage first, and then she headed back to the airport and flew back to LA so she could be back on set on the Monday. And like, those were her 2 days, you know, and it's like, you get somebody like that who comes in and is like super happy to be there and does an amazing job. And it's like, great. That's like super invigorating for the first 2 days of our shoot to have someone like her there. Because it really sets the tone for the other people who come in and like, oh, we have somebody else who's going to be here for a day or for 2 days. And it's like, you know, the crew and everyone has an expectation around like sort of how this works, and all the talent is on board, and, you know, it's nice.
Now, do you have any advice for dealing with agents when you're trying to hire top-end talent?
Advice for dealing with agents? Well, I mean, I think you just have to have your shit together. Because agents, they're not fucking around. They're trying to do the best things that they can for their clients, and they care about their clients. Maybe they care about you, maybe they don't. But at the end of the day, it's like, unless you're showing them how it's going to be beneficial to their client, then you're kind of wasting their time and probably your own, because it's not going to get it there. So, look at your script. Do you have typos all over your script? Do you have verbiage? And, do you have descriptives that are like paragraph after paragraph in between actual dialogue? I mean, if you're Tarantino, you can do that. His scripts are littered with descriptives, but he's Tarantino, so that's fine. For me, it's like, get your syntax in order. Make sure that you sort of know what the expected types of things are. And before you hit the send button on a script somewhere, make sure that it's full on ready and you're going to get your one read. So don't waste it. Take the extra time, really focus on the script, do it, and then just be no bullshit about it. Like, hey, this is what I can do, this is what I can't do. This is what we can pay, this is what we can't pay. I'd love to cast a person, but they have to work local. I'd love to do this, but they have to, whatever the things are. And I think agents will respect that and see that you're out to do stuff, and then just don't make stuff up. If you say you're going to do something, do it, because it sucks to have to retrade.
Right, exactly. And then it also starts tarnishing your reputation with that agency.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it as like, it's the Ben Cox brand, that's all I have. So whatever that brand is worth, it'll be worth less if I'm totally full of shit. But if I say, look, these are the things I'm going to do, even if it ends up taking a little bit longer, but you kind of get there, okay. But like, you're not going into it and saying, here's my $800 million movie, let's cast for this. That's sort of a waste of time. But if you come in and you're like, look, this is a feasible way that we can go about getting this done. We'd like to attach your actors because we think it'll help us with the remaining funds. You don't go in saying something silly like, we have all the money when you don't, or something like that. And then just don't waste people's time. You don't need to call every week even, just call when there's something relevant. And then I think you have a better chance. I'm not sure if that's much by way of advice, but
no, it's definitely good. It is good advice. It is good advice because it sounds rudimentary. Like, it's like, oh, just be honest, say what you're going to do. But sometimes you got to, filmmakers need to hear that, because a lot of times they want to try to impress, or they're like, yeah, we've got the money in the bank. Do you?
Yeah.
And if you get caught with that lie, it's over.
Yeah, well, be prepared to show bank statements. If you need to show a bank statement, show a bank statement. It's pretty straightforward. And if you can't show a bank statement, then there's a reason for that, right?
Exactly.
So, it's be prepared for people to call you on anything. But what's interesting is like I produced a movie that we shot this past fall. We just locked picture on. We're sending off to festivals soon. And what was great is like that was a movie that I got the benefit of having done Better Off Single with all these agents and with these agencies. They're like, oh, right, you. Like, we know who you are. I mean, still, you're an indie filmmaker. It's not like they're going to give you the same level of importance as they will
James Cameron.
James Cameron, as an example. But they're like, okay, great. Yeah, that's right. You employed my actors, and they had a great experience, and they got paid, and they're really happy with their performances, and it looks good for their reel. Sure, tell us about your next project. Like, you'll get that benefit on a go-forward basis. I think it's refreshing in that sense. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of resistance, and I get it. I mean, there's a lot of people who kind of say they're going to do something and then they don't. And, we're all kind of dealing with that, right? It's tricky.
Yeah. Oh God. Which brings me to my next question: financing. Because God knows, financing is always like, yeah, the money's in the bank. I know this billionaire. He just wants to be in movies. How much do you need? $200,000. Oh, that's nothing. That's his coffee. But let me just, I'm assuming you've heard that story a few times.
Yeah,
exactly. So how did you get the financing? If you don't mind me asking, like, how did you finance this beast?
I mean, about 1 million different conversations with, I mean, that might be an exaggeration. It
but
might
it's
be
true.
100,000 conversations. I don't know. It's a lot. Look, I think for me, it was really just a question of trying to let people know, like, this is what we're doing, and you keep going back and back and back and trying to improve upon all of the investing materials that you've pulled together, try to improve upon the script, try to improve upon the team, try to improve upon what actors are attached. Like, do everything you possibly can and just keep doing it and doing it and doing it, and then eventually people will write checks and you kind of do what you need to do. We created a capital structure that deployed development funds. So, obviously they're on the riskier side, but you get a little bit better of a bump on your position when you roll into the actual making of the film once you start shooting. So that's nice, but it gives you a little bit of leeway to make budgets and fly to LA when you need to, or, just to meet people, like that kind of stuff. And just kind of get you to a certain point. And then, straight equity, and then debt lending against the New York State production rebate. And I mean, getting a 30% below the line credit for everything you're doing in the state of New York is great.
It's nice.
So why not try to utilize it if you can? And then of course, trying to get deferrals from people and, whatever you can in order to just literally reduce the amount of cash you have to lay out of the gate. Because I'd rather give people back end when I don't have the funds than not. As I evolve in my career, assuming there's an evolution taking place, then I think the back end becomes more precious because that's where if you really make money, right? But
in theory,
yeah. But when you don't have the money to shoot at all, then back end is worth zero because there is nothing. Right. So I'd rather give away back end and shoot a movie and make a movie than have no movie to show for it at all. So I think it's just trying to get creative with the capital structure, and then going out and doing the best that you possibly can. And also, look, this is one of those ones where, for me, I'm like, listen, I'm producing, directing, and I'm writing this movie, and I'm going to get paid as a deferral for all that stuff. So, I will put my money where my mouth is with this. And if I don't believe that you can get paid back your equity plus some form of preferred return before I get paid to produce, write, and direct this movie, and, I think it makes it a little bit easier of a conversation to just be like, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is, and just kind of take from there.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. If you're getting a paycheck and then you're expecting everybody else not to get a paycheck and work on deferred, it's a tougher sell than if you're like, look, I'm in the same boat you guys are.
Yeah, and I think that works both for crews and for actors as well as for investors, because everybody is going to be taking some form of a capital risk one way or the other. Either it's opportunity cost with their time, or it's actually writing a check. And so, I think you just got to approach it the right way. And if you're asking yourself, well, what more can I do today to make this movie happen? That's a pretty obvious one. So I think on your first one, there's certainly no shame in it. And then once you sort of get past that point, then it's like, all right, look, I did that. I don't know if I can afford to keep doing that anymore. I've got 2 kids, blah, blah, blah.
I know the feeling.
and then also you're kind of like, now I have that track record, and I actually do know what I'm doing. So
right.
It's not just theoretical anymore. It's like, yeah, I can do this.
Yeah, I could. Yeah, exactly. You're now a feature director. You're not just a commercial director or a short film director. You're now officially a feature director. One's under your belt. So now they can't say that you can't do one.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
How did you get distribution for this film? And I know you are being distributed by friends of the show, Gravitas.
Yeah. No, they're great. We hired a company called Circus Road Films to.
I know Sebastian very well.
Yeah, right, exactly. Sebastian and Glenn, and literally they just said, okay, so this is what we think in terms of a plan, and we want to do things sort of all around a festival, and making sure we get things sort of going the right way. And then we hired a PR company called Prodigy to do a bunch of press for us around our premiere at the Santa Barbara International Film Festival.
How was that premiere, by the way? How is the festival? Is it a good? I heard it was a really good fest.
Yeah, I really like it a lot. I'd been a whole bunch of times to Sundance and around on Tribeca and a bunch of different places, and I had never been to the Santa Barbara Festival. And then someone mentioned to me, you guys should sort of check these these folks out, and like literally I was looking into it, and then they called us, and they were like, "Hey, we heard about your movie," and I was like, "Really?"
Well,
Like, okay, cool. And they wouldn't really divulge it, how they heard about it or whatever. But
sure,
like,
of course.
But presumably from us submitting somewhere else, and maybe somebody said something good like, "Hey, we can't program the movie, but
Maybe you should.
you should take a look at it." And so they took a look at it, and they said we'd love to program it. And then so we talked to I talked to Aaron Tveit and Abby Elliott and Kellen Coleman and Lauren Miller Rogan, and just try to figure out, well, who's going to be in LA then, and who can come out for this and help us with the PR. And so, folks came out for the premiere, which was great. And, we had 2 sellouts for the movie. And then the festival was like, "Hey, you sold it out twice. We'll give you a 3rd screening." So we're like, great. So then we, played the movie again, which was cool. And I think because of the nice press around that and the positioning that like Circus Road had been doing with, the various distributors, it helped. And then also Aaron Tveit, just prior to that, was he played Danny Zuko on Grease Live. And so like his IMDb star meter the week of our premiere at Santa Barbara was 1, and so we're like, all right, that's good, we like that. And so we actually had a number of companies that were pretty aggressively pursuing us to distribute the movie, which was great. And I think I couldn't have asked for a better festival experience in terms of like just the way the festival was, and I would definitely recommend the festival to anyone. I mean, it's nice. They know what they're doing over there, and they're giving awards to a lot of celebrities as well, Oscar contenders and things like that, leading up to the Academy Awards, and I think that helps also just in general getting members of press up there and kind of doing stuff. I mean, like Leonard Maltin, of all people, happened to be at the premiere of Better Off Single, and I'm like, awesome. Like, here. So it's just one of those kind of interesting things that's just what happens in Santa Barbara, and so that was nice. And I think it definitely helped.
Now, the last 2 questions I ask all of my guests. What is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in life or in the film business? That's it's my Oprah question. If you were a tree, what kind of... No, I'm joking.
That is an Oprah question. I'm definitely an Oprah fan. Largest lesson, boy, I don't know. I feel like I wonder how deep I should get with that.
I've had people go extremely deep, so as deep as you feel comfortable with, sir.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think like it's tricky. It's tricky. I think there's a balance between the notion of some of the things that we talked about earlier, like taking the steering wheel and throwing it out the window, and really trying to like move forward with like making a project and getting it done, and then also like your personal life, because in order to get a movie like this made, you're doing crazy things, like you're editing through the night, you're whatever, there's like lots of stuff that happens to make a movie like this. But I do think there is a balance between sort of how that goes and then how much strain you can put on like your personal relationships, like with your wife or with your kids or like whatever. I mean, there's only so far you can take it. I mean, I think trying to find the right balance for like how obsessed you want to become with the making of the movie versus like
your life.
Yeah, ensuring that you have other things going on that are sort of outside that whole thing, which in part for me is why I love living in New York, because people don't really care if you make movies, like if you're in LA, it's like everybody's talking about movies and TV, and that's great, but like it's hard for somebody like me because I'm kind of obsessed. So so trying to figure out where that obsession should end, because that's a pretty important lesson, and probably one that it's taken me a little while to learn. I'm not sure if I've fully learned it. You'd have to ask my wife, but nonetheless, I think it's important.
And then, what are the 3 of your favorite films of all time?
3 of my favorite films of all time. I mean, I think Casablanca might be my favorite of all time. I think not only from like a screenwriting perspective and just how quotable that movie is. I mean, it's incredible how many of the lines from that film permeate the
culture.
the American
zeitgeist. Yeah.
even now. I mean, it's remarkable in that sense. But I also think like Curtiz just did like an incredible job from a directing perspective in terms of like where the camera is. What do you have in the foreground? What do you have in the background? What are you doing to really suck people in? And I think it also has one of the most compelling and important scenes in cinematic history with that whole sort of battle between the German national anthem and the French national anthem.
Oh, it was a great scene. Oh,
I think that scene and that sequence is hugely important and just sort of globally important at the time as well. And that's definitely sort of right up there for me in terms of one of the films that really works for me. I think a movie like Annie Hall is.
You read my mind too. I was thinking of that movie.
Oh yeah, I mean it's tremendous. I mean on so many levels, and I think it's just fascinating. I think there's a lot of like things you can learn from a movie like that. I mean, there's sort of like the Save the Cat screenwriting book and the concept of like the Pope in the pool, right? Like you need to get exposition out, but you don't want to bore people, so you have to come up with a Pope in the pool swimming laps in the background of like the exposition just to distract people and make sure that they feel entertaining. You watch something like Annie Hall, and it's like, he's driving his car, or Annie's driving him home from meeting at the tennis match or whatever, and she's like almost getting into a car accident, and he finds like a half-eaten sandwich in the car, and like there's like these comedic moments, but the entire time she's talking about her Grammy and Chippewa Falls and setting up stuff later. And there's just so much depth and so many layers to just like not just like Pope in the pool type stuff, but like all of the things that he does and getting really personal and letting scenes play and just being epically creative, which I think is super duper powerful and really kind of fascinating. And then I don't know, I'd say anything that like Kubrick does. Like I just think like the amount of detail in any Stanley Kubrick movie is sort of mind-boggling. And I can see like, all right, well, I don't know if I need to do like 89 takes of a particular scene necessarily. I mean, but like when things work, it's kind of great. I mean, like the duel scene in Barry Lyndon is one of my favorites of all time, and it's played so slow, but like I don't see how the comedy could be any better. I mean, it's genius. and like I just think from like a craft perspective, the stuff that he does in his pictures that he did, it really just sort of takes it to another level, and so it kind of gives us all something that we can aspire toward.
So where can people find you online?
So my company is Red Square Pictures. If you go to redsquarepictures.com, you can find links to a bunch of different things there. It's on Facebook and Twitter and all that kind of stuff. Better Single is out October 7th. So there's various clips and trailers and stuff like that still going to be released in the coming days leading up to the October 7th release of the movie. And that'll be up on iTunes and in theaters in select cities and different places there. So you can find Better Off Single in a whole bunch of places. But yeah, I think redsquarepictures.com is a good place to start, and Facebook and Twitter, of course.
Thank you, man. Thanks for being on the show and dropping some knowledge bombs on the tribe, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. Really a pleasure.
Hope you guys enjoyed my interview with Benjamin Cox. And I'm so happy that he got that movie made. It looks funny as all hell. You'll be able to see the trailer and links to where it's available in the show notes at indiefilmhustle.com/110 or 110. So guys, thanks again as always. And don't forget to head over to indiefilmsyndicate.com and check out the over 300 tutorial online videos and courses that we have for filmmakers and this very thriving film community, where we're actually now doing portfolio reviews of people submitting commercials, short films, trailers, and I kind of just review it with them live, and I post it up on the Facebook group and in the syndicate, so everybody can learn from it, and we could all kind of grow as filmmakers together. So it's a really fun community, guys. I really wish I wanted to make it bigger and get it as big as humanly possible. There's a lot of value there. So indiefilmsyndicate.com. And if you want that 25% off coupon, it's still available. Head over to indiefilmhustle.com/25 off, the number 25 and off. And don't forget to head over to filmmakingpodcast.com and leave me a good review, guys. It really helps the show out a lot. So thank you again so much. And as always, keep that hustle going, keep that dream alive, and I will talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.